In 45 days, The Life of a Showgirl, the 12th album by Taylor Swift, is coming out. And in the meantime, I thought that we could relate the track list to books and see if we can make any connections, any predictions, and at least have a reading list for the meantime. All of these recommendations are based on my predictions of what I think these songs could be about, the aesthetics that we have been getting from the different album covers, and just the whole new era that we're entering of The Life of a Showgirl. First track, The Fate of Ophelia, is already saying so much based on the Shakespearean figure Ophelia, which we know has a tragic ending, represents the loss of innocence. She finds herself in this environment that forever changes her life and immortalizes her figure as a tragic name that now Taylor is using for her opening track. And for that one, I'm going to recommend The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. Now, a lot of people have already read this book, hence why it's a classic, but I want to make the connection based on one quote that I found of Oscar talking about The Picture of Dorian Gray in this book, De Profundis, which is really the letter that he sent from prison in his last years. Now, in the introduction of this book, they talk about one interview that he did in which they were asking him about his three main characters in The Picture of Dorian Gray. In the quote, he says, "Basil is what I think I am. Lord Henry, what the world thinks of me. Dorian, what I would like to be, in other ages, perhaps." After reading that quote, I went back and reread The Picture of Dorian Gray with the lenses of three characters that can represent three personas of the same person, in this case, Oscar Wilde. And in that way, I think this book could make a great connection with The Fate of Ophelia, but also with the whole album itself, in which I think Taylor is gonna show us very different personas of herself. I think she's gonna really go into depth not only of the showgirl persona and the Taylor behind the curtain persona, but also the different personas that she wears when she's a showgirl. We have seen this with the Era Store and how she has been going through all the eras, very different theatrical acts for each album, and how quickly she changes characters and ages, which have made up all her music career. So in that sense, I'm going to recommend The Picture of Dorian Gray. For our second track, we have Elizabeth Taylor, which I'm so obsessed with. Elizabeth Taylor is my birthday soulmate. We were born on the same day, and I love to throw that fact out there. I love the figure of Elizabeth Taylor, and Taylor does as well. We have seen this in the Wildest Dreams music video, where she's making reference to Elizabeth Taylor and her life of an actress and having this tumultuous relationship in the background as she's filming. For that, I'm going to recommend The Great Gatsby. This is another work that Taylor has referenced as well. We see this in Happiness. I hope she'll be a beautiful fool, quoting the words of Daisy in this novel. When I saw the cover, I immediately thought The Great Gatsby in the 1920s and the flappers and all that glamour and excess of glitter, if that makes any sense, and champagne and parties and this almost blinding American dream that leaves us with a very tragic ending and story and just a heartbreaking, short but powerful narrative. Opalite. That one I'm going to relate to The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. We know that Opalite represents healing, has this spiritual quality, transformation. I think of that when I think of Addie LaRue in the sense of the pact that she makes with the fates to have this endless life, but also what that makes her, transforms her into this Opalite kind of person. I think of her as the see-through spirit people see her, and then when you turn around and you look again at her, you don't remember, so it's almost as if she has never been there, kind of like a ghost. I just love the nostalgic, wandering nature. It feels as if Addie is in this constant act and play. She has to introduce herself to everyone at any given moment, and I feel that in that she's playing this person. She remembers those people, but they don't remember her. So in a way, she's kind of acting to them as if we have just met. Father figure. I know Taylor, and I know that this track it's gonna be full of irony. I'm going to recommend Good Material. I love this book so much, but I also see why many people don't like this book. I think that it's meant to be read with sarcasm and irony the whole way through. This is a very flawed character, and something that's very interesting is that it's written by a woman, but it's told in the perspective of the male main character. I just love the tragic nature of his mundane life. He's a comedian. He's not doing so great, and he's trying to make it, and that is taking all of his relationships with it. His broken dreams are just bringing his personal life down, and we see him through this time of just being lost and trying to figure it out, but also make art at the same time. Is It's really funny, it's really silly. At least that's how I read it. When I read this book and then Torture Poets came out and The Smallest Man played, and in that final bridge she says they kicked out the lights but you're still performing. That is this book to a T. And so I feel that we're gonna get a different perspective of the show person. What happens when the show person gets lost in their own show. Eldest Daughter, I'm thinking nothing new. I want to recommend In the Cafe of Lost Youth. This is one of my favorite books ever, if not my favorite book. It's by Patrick Modiano and it's translated from the French. It's super tiny and it reads very quickly. I think I read it in one day. I don't want to tell you much because of how short it is. If I tell you the plot of it, although it's very character driven, it's gonna give away the whole book. There's this cafe in Paris, or narrator is fascinated with this girl that he keeps seeing at the cafe. She's a regular, just so fascinated by her figure, and so we see this whole narrative through his eyes of finding out who she is. And it's one of those, when you don't know the person, they seem so mysterious and kind of glamorous to you, but then you get to see what's really going on in their life and you realize that they might even have more problems and things to deal with than you first thought of, and they really have a lot of depth to them and just a lot of ugliness in their life. But when you first see them, they are so enchanting and beautiful. You cannot see past that first image that you get of them. It feels very theatrical. This is following the showgirl behind the curtains and getting to see what her real life is. We're in the friendship. I'm so excited for that song. First of all, I'm going to give Talking at Night, along with Normal People. This is my favorite love story. It's so wonderful. It goes through many years in these two characters' life. But when they meet each other, they're instantly attracted to each other, and then something happens and they have to remain friends. But there's this constant kind of like angst of you waiting at the edge of your seat for them to ruin the friendship. It's really a story about love and not a romance story. It's literary fiction. It feels like one day it feels like Normal People. It's actually romantic. I'm going to recommend one of the best books ever written, one that I think it's going to become a classic in years to come, and that is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, of course. This book has been related to so many songs, recommended so many times, but with actually romantic. If you don't know the plot, the love of her life is very surprising. The life of Evelyn Hugo feels very tragic and dramatic. It's what happened to the seven husbands, and how you are here by yourself doing this last interview. Your Hollywood ages have already passed, and you're this actress that the public feels they know everything about, but they really don't know anything about you, and you're giving randomly this interview. What's going on? There's this mystery to this woman, and what begins as a tragic story ends up being actually romantic. If you know, you know, but if you don't know, you need to read it. It also feels quite literally the life of a showgirl. Evelyn Hugo, it's this actress, kind of like the Marilyn Monroe figure, and in that same way as Elizabeth Taylor, I think it's yet another iconic figure in the show business. Wish list. This is a book that I'm currently reading, Happy Hour. Have this left. Hopefully I can finish it tonight. This book is so funny and so dramatic, but also so honest. A very sarcastic, heartbreaking, glamorous way that it feels so real to life. This book follows two friends who moved to New York for the summer. It's really cool that you see the months pass and it goes from June to August, and they're just figuring it out. They're two very strong personalities. They're like two Leos, and money is a big theme in here as they're trying to survive in the city. It feels very New York in the sense that you meet so many people. Some of them become something important, some of them are just passing, some of them are in their way of finding their people, have like a 5-second conversation with them, but that can also be important. And I feel that this book does human connection a lot of justice, shows imperfect relationships, the two girls' friendship. It's a big theme in this book, but it's also showing how that friendship is not perfect all the time. The observations that our main character has on life, New York, love, society, economy. It really does feel like a hot summer evening that doesn't seem to end. I believe that these two characters are real people that are out there in New York, and if I were down one of those avenues, I would find them. This was the most complicated one to make a connection of, and my connection is very loose, but wood got me thinking of trees And trees make me think of the bell jar because there's that fig tree in here that is very, very life-changing. If you have read the bell jar, you know what I'm talking about. If you have not, I'm not gonna say more because you need to go into this and find the fig tree for yourself and experience that for the first time. Bell jar, it's the novel by Sylvia Plath that is very autobiographical, so it does follow a lot of themes that took place in Sylvia's real life and in a fictionalized version. We see this young woman who's in New York, kind of her dream job. She finally has it. Slowly we see her go through this mental breakdown, and the narrative does a wonderful thing in the sense that since you are inside of her head, you don't really notice at first when it's happening because it's so slowly taking her into it that when you realize you're just too far gone. A very intense read. I think this is the only book where I have had to stop and breathe for a second before I continue reading. I think this is a book that Taylor has mentioned liking. I know that Taylor likes Emily Dickinson and Sylvia Plath was a fan of Emily, so there's some connection there. I feel the main character in this book, it's inside of the torture aisle of the torture poets department. I made a playlist about that and I feel that she would be the one writing those songs. This is a torture girl and quite literally a torture poet. I don't know what the song would really be, but I do find that this book overall, it's a really good read for the deeper and darker themes that this album might bring up, because I think that Taylor is gonna show us the good and the bad of the life of a showgirl. And so in all caps, this is yet again one of my favorite books ever. This book was adapted into a movie. That movie doesn't know justice whatsoever. The main character in this book, she is being perceived by this unnamed narrator, and so he's not very reliable, tainted with his feelings about her and also how he feels about her feelings about him. This really like not met love on his eyes, and so through that our main girl can seem very superficial and foolish, and what the movie did is that it really took on that aesthetic and those visuals for the film, which look so beautiful, but when you look for deeper themes on them, it doesn't really quite show you everything about this story. But I feel that the novel or novella does, and that is Breakfast at Tiffany's by Truman Capote. This book, it's even shorter than this because this has some extra stories at the end. It's only this out of the whole book. It takes place in New York and we follow Holly, the mystery of her really. She from the outside seems as this party girl that has a different boyfriend every night so they can pay for the restaurants and drinks and gifts. But really, once we get to know her story, it shows that there's much more to her. I think Taylor would love this, especially with aesthetic of a showgirl. I think that Holly is a real life showgirl. She's doing show business throughout her day-to-day life. For Honey, we have the lover. I feel that Honey is gonna show us all those in-between moments of being with the one that you love, and I feel that the lover does that. The lover is set in this very violent environment, but there's this one scene where our two characters are in this hotel room and the window's open, and she's saying how their love and their quietness in that room kind of muffles out the noise outside, and that scene has stayed with me for so long after I read it, and I feel that that could be a representation of what I think Taylor might bring to the album with songs like Honey. And then for the title of the whole album, here's the book that is on my TBR that I'll be reading as I wait for The Life of a Showgirl to come out, and that is The Night Circus. I have heard so many wonderful things about this book. It has been recommended to me so many times, but I have never found the perfect opportunity to read it. But now I think we have found that. The Night Circus, I don't know much about it because that's how I like to go into my books, but I know that it kind of blends reality and magic in ways that are unexpected, and it's kind of hard to tell when the show ends and when real life starts. And I do feel that that's something that Taylor is going to refer to in her album, because even when she gets downstage, there are many moments in her real life where the stage kind of follows her. If someone meets her on the streets, not that she's not going to be genuine, but she knows that she's Taylor Swift, and that person is suddenly put back even when she's on her way to grab coffee. I feel that The Night Circus might do that. And also I feel that this one is the one where the whole aesthetic of the book, this very show, theater, performance, life, it's really going to go along with the album. Those are all of my recommendations as we wait for The Life of a Showgirl to come out. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you read any of this, if you have read any of this and you agree or disagree with me. And I'll see you on my next video. Bye! Also, I should add that the hotel scene, the continuously going back to each other kind of love relationship, and the longing and journey in The Great Gatsby do connect really well with my debut novel, which I'm currently writing. I'll be telling you more about it on another video. But for now, let's read as we wait for The Life of a Showgirl to come out.